Hello folks, in today's episode I'm going to talk to you guys about my FMS Super Cub. This is the 1300 millimeter version. I've done a few mods to it. So I'm going to talk to you about what I've done and things that you can do in your radio settings that apply to other airplanes too. That'll help you out, or just, fun stuff to play around with in your radio and stuff. So, all right, let's jump into it. So the first thing I did when I got this plane is I replaced both of the rear servos on the tail, and I went with some Metal Gear digital servos. Post a link to those down in the description below. They're pretty good. They were about 20 bucks, I think, for two of them, and it just gives you a peace of mind. There are some videos or complaints about the tail servos stripping out. They do go through a lot of abuse. And speaking of abuse, while we're back here, I did rehinge my rudder. I just used some CA. They actually have metal pins in them, and my rudder pulled apart. I had an accident back here with it coming undone, hauling it around, coming back from the flying field. So yeah, I rehinged it. Wasn't that big a deal, and it works well. Another thing I did is I replaced the tail wheel, just a Duobro, I think 3/4 inch wheel. It works all right. You have to put a little spacer in there. I just use a tie strap. It works perfect. This thing taxis straight as an arrow. Pretty cool deal there. So another thing I did, as you guys can notice, is I removed almost all the stickers except for the Raven on the back here, and I got some vinyl strip, basically. Got off Amazon. Post a link down below if you guys are interested, and just kind of making it look a little more scale. I painted the wheels, and then I put some stripes on the bottom of the wing, as you can see. I like the black wheels. It makes it look, again, a little more scale and whatnot. That kind of thing. I changed the prop. Actually, this is a wood prop I found at the hobby store used. So I went ahead and picked it up. I haven't even flown the plane yet with it. I just kind of got it on there. It looks cool. We'll see, what happens. I also painted my spinner, but as you can see, it's a little scratched up and whatnot. So yeah, there you go. The servos on the wing are stock. I've got a lot of flights on this plane, and I haven't had any issues with the stock servos. They seem to be doing their job pretty good. So when I first got the plane, I think it was my first or second outing, my tire pressure was too low, and I had a hard landing and ended up cracking one of the wheels here. And I used super glue and baking soda and just kind of spread it around in there, and I got the seal back up. This tire holds air now, which is really cool. So I didn't have to buy new wheels. So just keep that in mind if you guys are running air tires, pretty much for any plane. You don't want to run the pressure too low, because if you do have a hard landing, it will crack the wheel. So getting into the inside and electronics, I fly Spectrum. So I have, let's see, what is this? This is the 637T. So this has telemetry, and it has some sensors in it. It'll tell you your G-force and your altitude and that kind of stuff. It has a port to put an airspeed sensor on it, which I don't know. I'm really not going to go that route. I fly this on four cell, and I don't think I've ever flown it on 3 cell. So, and just so you guys know, the stock ESC does support 4 cell, no problem. I am running an avian speed control in this. Right now it has a 45 amp, I believe, avian. I did have a 70 in there for a while, but I changed it out to another plane because I needed that. You don't need a 70 in this thing. It's just, you get away fine with a 40 and a 45 amp. So yeah, 4 cell, anywhere from 2200 down to 1500. The 1500 packs, I've had a little bit of bad luck because, it depends on your flying style. If you're putting it around, you can get a solid 5 minutes out of the 1500 4 cells. But if you're pushing it around and doing a bunch of stuff and doing big loops and stuff, the battery will sneak up on you. And so I've had a couple abrupt landings because of that. So you got to watch out for that. I would set the timer for 4 minutes if you're running the 1500s. The 2200 4S, it flies a long time. You could probably get 7 minutes of leisurely flying out of those. So yeah. The props, I run the stock size prop, 11 by 7. I do have some 12 by 6s. I play with those sometimes. There's a little bit of a difference, but I just assume keep the 11.7 works fine. And with the 4S, you have unlimited vertical. I mean, it's stupid fast. So there's really no need to be messing around, in my opinion, with the props or whatever. So yeah. So the cool thing that I started playing around with this plane is, and it's something you guys can do too in your radio, is, like I said, I have the Spectrum, so I have the Spectrum gyro in there, the AS3X or whatever it's called. And what I started doing is playing around with the lock. And so what I did is I programmed my gyro switch on my flap switch. So when my flaps are up, I have, lower gain settings, with no heading or anything. Run the gain's pretty low, so it kind of flies normal, right? And then as the flaps go down, the gains increase and the lock increases. So on takeoff flaps, there's a little bit of lock on the aileron and a little bit on the rudder and elevator. And then on full flaps, for landing flaps, I have it really locked up. Now, this is something you guys can experiment with. Like I said, you can do this on a lot of different planes. It's kind of surprising that I don't hear anybody else talk about it really. But basically, when I was playing with it and first started playing with it on the grass, I could land this thing with no input. It would land itself. Yeah. So what you got to be careful though, because you have to give rudder input if you're flying the plane with the rudder locked. And I'm running between say 10 and 15% lock. I think on the tail I run maybe 10 or a little bit lower than that, and then on the elevator and ailerons I'll run 15% ish, somewhere in that ballpark. We'll take a look at where I'm at right now on my radio.
Flight mode 2, takeoff flaps. Flight mode 3, landing flaps. Flight mode 2, takeoff flaps. Flight mode 1, flaps up. Flight mode 2, takeoff flaps. Flight mode 3, landing flaps. Flight mode 2, takeoff flaps. Flight mode 1, flaps up.
And we can see that. So it's really fun to play with. Now, why I say you have to use your rudder input if you have it locked up is because the plane will drag the rudder through a turn. If you're just trying to turn with your elevator, if you're banked over like this, the plane is going to drag the tail. So the tail is going to droop and it's going to drag and it's going to want to pitch up. It's kind of a weird sensation. So you have to turn because it's wanting to keep the fuselage straight and locked in that position, right? Now, the beauty of this is when you're landing, as you just seen in the video, is if it's locked up, and especially if the wind conditions are right and everything, it's just pretty much going to stay in that attitude. And if you get the throttle setting correct, it'll just come down and float down and gently land itself. It's kind of cool. It's something fun to play with. I know a lot of guys are like, oh, I don't fly gyros and blah, 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 blah. Well, I fly the gyros and I took it to the next level by doing the lock. And it's pretty cool. I want to experiment more with it because I'm thinking like if you were to do like a knife edge setup, maybe you could lock the tail again, and even the aileron. So, or maybe for rolling, locking the tail, again, I haven't experimented with that kind of stuff. Oh, speaking of rolling, I do have this has some, quite a bit of adverse yaw. And so you guys can either do that with the ailerons where you decrease the throw going down, or you can do what I did and I put a rudder mix in. So I have, I don't know, 15-20%, we can check my radar right now again, of rudder input. So when I give aileron, it gives a little bit of rudder. And this thing rolls on axis pretty good. It's almost perfect. I could probably fine tune it a little bit if I wanted to. The other thing is I have elevator mixed in with the flaps, which is typical. But other than that, I don't have any other mixes. I thought I was playing around with one. No, so I don't have any other mixes except, like I said, the lock and the way it's set up with the flaps. Now, you guys don't have to set it up on the flap switch. I thought it was just kind of cool, something to do, The other thing, too, it could help with is hovering. If you have it locked up a little bit, I could see where the benefits could be there, too. So, anyways, if you guys have any questions or comments, you guys can post them down below, and I'll try to answer them the best I can. Again, this is the FMS Super Cub. It's a really cool plane. It's really fun. The landing gear I took apart and bent also too. I was going to say that it's, once you do that, the landing gear doesn't bend. I see a lot of these planes on the internet, the wheels are out like that. But if you take the time and take this all apart, you can tweak these bars here to where you get just a little bit of camber on these, go facing out or in or whatever you want to call it, right? Be positive camber. And then that way it allows, I don't know, it just works better this way. I don't know what it allows, but it works better and it looks better. It looks more scaled this way too. So yeah, awesome plane. I love it. Pretty cool. I think we covered everything that I wanted to share with you guys. So until next time.